The nation's sick economy. After the 1920s, we're making our way into the Great Depression era, which begins with the stock market crash in 1929. But before we get going on this depressing subject, let's go ahead and tell a joke to get everybody's spirits up. The joke is Jay Cutler. Oh, I don't think you saw that one coming. Anyway, key concepts for the for this unit or for this day rather are: what are the underlying problems that existed during the 1920s before the stock market crash in 1929, and what is the role of credit that it plays during the 1920s? Lots of vocabulary today. Recession, depression, these are similar as far as what's happening, just with different meanings than the Great Depression, along with installment buying, speculation, and the stock market. We're going to start with the Roaring Twenties and how it leads into the Great Depression. The Roaring Twenties, oftentimes the perception of the Roaring Twenties is that life is good, the economy is good, the pop culture there's a lot of fun that has to do with pop culture, and even some of the troubled areas. People don't want to give up drinking when prohibition comes around, but still there are tons of speakeasies. The cops aren't available to shut them down. Gangsters, yes, they take off, but they're like celebrities. So why is it that the Roaring Twenties are actually a really bad thing? Well, we just talked about the perception of the 1920s that, yep, a lot of good, a lot of crazy, a lot of fun. But the reality is that the Roaring Twenties, specifically economically, there is a lot of trouble brewing. And that's the thing that we're going to focus on today. Let's go ahead and get right into the troubling part of the 1920s and the focus, like I said, right away on the economic issues. And the first place we can look is industries. There are a lot of new industries, but one of the things that does is it hurts older industries. And we see that with a lot of the new transportation that comes around. Trucks and cars is taking the place of railroads, and that's having a large impact on the older industries that we saw kind of come of age during the Industrial Revolution. Another area that is really hurting at this time is housing. And people aren't buying houses at this time, and that hurts a lot of manufacturing uh, jobs that have an effect or come into play when people are buying or building houses. A second area is farmers. Farmers are having a lot of struggle again. They did well during World War One, but after World War One, they do not have as many buyers, and we see farmers do one of the same things we saw them do back in the late 19th century. Is they, in order to make up for the money they're not buying, they try and grow more crops. However, it brings down the prices, and again, we see a lot of farmers defaulting on their loans. When farmers default on their loans, banks don't receive the money, and now banks go out of business. You have to keep that in mind. Banks are businesses. They will default, they will go out of business too. Consumers. Consumers face a tough issue here, and some of it is their fault, but we'll get to that shortly. Consumers have an issue that they are dealing with, and that is the prices of a lot of goods are going up in price. However, their wages remain the same. That means they have less buying power, and therefore, if they want to buy goods, they either need to save up money longer to get it, or they're going to have to start borrowing money. We'll see. Credit is another reason why the economy is in trouble. Lots of people have been borrowing money, they're spending a lot of borrowed money, and not only is this a problem for consumers, but this is also a problem for banks because somebody has to borrow the money to the consumers, has to lend the money to the consumers, and banks are doing this and they're doing it too much. And that creates big problems, especially when a lot of that money is being borrowed to put into the stock market. And we'll talk about that briefly as well. The final issue is that there's a large uneven distribution of income. Okay, a lot of the wealthy have a lot of the money, and a ton of poor people have very little money. And what it does is it creates a very fragile foundation on which the economy is built. As I just mentioned, borrowing was becoming a big problem, and that became a big problem with the stock market. Now, we'll do a simulation of this in class, but the idea of speculation, or the idea of just participating in the stock market, is to make money. Speculation, however, is when you play the stock market and you do so with the attempt of getting rich really fast. Okay, sounds really good, but very difficult to do. And this is what a lot of people do in the 1920s. They participate in speculation. However, there's a big problem with it during the 1920s, and that is people are borrowing on margin, meaning that people borrow a lot of money, and when they buy stock, they use only a little bit of their own money and a lot of borrowed money to buy their stock. Okay? That means if you don't win playing this game of the stock market and trying to get rich quickly, if you don't get rich quickly, you're going to owe a lot of money. And since banks are willing to give people a lot of money at this time, when the stock market collapses, that's going to cause big problems for people and banks. And that's where we're going to end today. We'll start up with Black Tuesday next time. Bye.